mid to low single figures in some sheltered spots. But we start off Wednesday with sunny spells, although a chill in the air. There will be plenty of bright weather out there. And actually, for many, we'll avoid the showers, especially through this central swathe. But western and eastern parts will still see further showers and a brisk breeze, and that will make it feel on the cool side, 14 to 16 Celsius typically. Spells of rain pushing in from the North Sea then into northeast England, and that toppling into the rest of northern England, the Midlands, and as it pushes south through the early hours of Thursday, it will turn to showers before it reaches South Wales and southern England. Further showers come in across northern parts of the UK overnight as well. In between the showers, there will also be some clear spells, but it won't be quite as cool, I think, overnight because of the additional cloud cover, and so temperatures more like the high single figures than the low single figures. We start off Thursday with plenty of bright weather. There'll still be some showers, especially in the north and the east, those showers on the heavy side around northern England as well as eastern Scotland. Friday sees more prolonged rain arrive as well as a strengthening wind. Bright spells and showers on Saturday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening. The top stories tonight. The Labour leader has promised he'll create a fairer, greener and more dynamic Labour Party for Britain. Sir Keir Starmer said he'll create a publicly owned green energy company within a year of being elected. His keynote speech at the Labour Party conference came after days of financial market uncertainty in the wake of the Chancellor's mini-budget. Speaking in Liverpool, Sir Keir also took aim at the government.
The government has lost control of the British economy. And for what? They've crashed the pound. And for what? My government will be different. We will run towards the challenges of tomorrow. We will get us out of this endless cycle of crisis. And we will do it with a fresh start, a new set of priorities, and a new way of governing.
Well, the Chancellor, for his part, has told City investors he's confident in the government's long-term plan for growth after the pound hit a record low against the dollar. Kwasi Kwarteng reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal sustainability in a meeting with pension funds, insurers and asset managers. And next month, he's due to set out a package of regulatory reforms for the UK's financial sector to drive growth and, he says, incentivise investment. Well, also at conference today, the Labour MP Rupa Huq has offered the Chancellor her sincere and heartfelt apologies for comments she made describing him as superficially black. Ms Huq has been suspended from the Labour Party following the recorded comments she made about Kwasi Kwarteng at a Labour conference fringe event yesterday. Labour has condemned the comments, calling them totally inappropriate. Away from the Labour Party conference, the Royal Mail are saying that workers are staging a further 19 strikes across the months of October and November. It's the latest in a dispute between the Communication Workers Union and Royal Mail over pay and conditions. The union had already set out plans for strikes from later this month to early October. The union says the fresh strikes will have a dramatic impact and will cover peak periods such as Black Friday, Cyber Monday and the build-up to Christmas. The president of the EU Commission says the leaks from the Nord Stream gas pipelines yesterday were caused by sabotage. Seismologists in Denmark and Sweden said they'd registered 2 powerful blasts on Monday in the area of the leaks. Ursula von der Leyen has warned of the strongest possible response should the European energy infrastructure be attacked. An investigation has been launched into the cause. Here at home, next year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held either in Glasgow or in Liverpool. The BBC said the 2 remaining cities, which both have Riverside Arena venues, had the strongest overall offer. The broadcaster says a final decision will be made within weeks. And that's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Headliners.
Good evening, I'm Simon Evans. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Headliners tonight. Today I am joined by 2 fantastic comedians, the effervescent Simon Fanshawe and the ever-present Josh Howie. Well, he was here last night. So, gentlemen, you well? Are you ready to dive in?
Ready, I've got the pen, paper.
Excellent. You look poised as ever, Simon.
I feel spiffing.
Perfectly. Let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail leads with Lawrence Killer's sickening selfies from his jail cell in flashy watch and aviator sunglasses. Murderer posts foul-mouthed rant boasting he'll be out in 2 years. Can't help wondering if the Daily Mail are trying to distract us from other slightly more important stories. The Telegraph, reverse tax cuts, IMF tells Truss. Global lender makes rare intervention to attack PM's decision to abolish the top rate. And our freedom fight is like Kosovo, says the SNP. The Guardian leads with a Labour moment. Starmer sets out his plan for a return to power, and mortgage payers warned of significant rise in rates. And sabotage fears after leaks in Nord Stream pipelines. The Financial Times leads with market turmoil requires tough action from Bank of England, its chief economist warns, and sabotage concerns after leads with Britain will get its future back. Starmer's message of hope. State-owned energy pledge to cut our bills and give country fresh start. Or a return to the 70s, of course. The Daily Express leads with twindemic alert. Go get your jabs. A surging twindemic of COVID and flu viruses could wreak havoc on the health services this winter. And Putin blamed for gas pipeline terror attack. Maybe. Finally, the Daily Star leads with 180 bullseye. NASA crashes £300 million. I'm sure it was priced in dollars originally, but there we are, 300 million. Well, they're pretty much the same at the moment, aren't they? Dart spacecraft into asteroid to prove they could save humanity. And those were your front pages. So, notwithstanding shenanigans in jail on the front page of the Mail, a couple of stories certainly seem to dominate tomorrow morning. First up in The Guardian, Starmer makes some big promises on energy if he only had the power. Tell us about that, Josh.
So, obviously, it's a big Labour conference at the moment. Keir Starmer's giving his big speech, and he's saying the headline, state-backed energy and a sense of hope. And that's sort of distilling down the essence of what he's talking about, setting up this this new sort of national company.
He wants to call it Great Britain Power or something?
Great British Energy, I think is what he wants to call it. He's also saying he wants to, the party is going to fight the Tories on economic growth, so that's a pretty easy fight. But as he points out, you know, the largest onshore wind farm in Wales is owned by Sweden.
Yep.
China has a stake in the UK nuclear industry.
Yep.
And then millions of people pay their bills to a French company.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so absolutely. Start this thing, and the idea is it would create like 1 million jobs. It would also hopefully work towards greener society. I read an interesting article separately to this, a letter by one of the people who started one of the biggest fracking companies in the world. And he sort of said that actually the UK isn't a great place for fracking because of the geology and stuff. What he said, what we do have, though, and should be invested in, and this is possibly one of the things that they could talk about, is we have the second largest tide distribution in the world, tidal distribution.
Leon Solent.
Yeah, so so that's like a massive thing. And also the other thing is we've got like a load of warm water just below the surface that can be easily accessed.
Well, I can explain that, and I'm afraid I was caught short, but...
That's fine. But anyway, look, he seems to be doing... And the other thing is that, as this headline says, is a sense of hope. And this is what he's sort of talking about at the end, is that he really is... He's sort of saying that Britain should be ambitious. And, you know, if he says some nation's going to lead the world in offshore wind, why not this one? Exactly, why not this one?
Why not that one, Simon?
I think the slogan that I like was British Power for British People. And I liked it because...
blood and soil.
Well, I just thought that it's the riposte to take back control. It's a Brexitish sounding slogan. So actually, I felt to me it was
He's quite keen on the flag, actually, isn't he, Starmer?
Well, look, why not, though? It seems so peculiar, this idea of Jeremy Corbyn not singing the national anthem. Singing the national anthem at the Labour Party conference is odd, said Jeremy
but
Corbyn.
they'll all wave Palestinian flags when they were doing
Well, they clearly would, but it does seem to me, why wouldn't... I mean, I know the national anthem is all about the king, but why wouldn't you sing the national anthem if you want to be government of the country? It seems to be sort of axiomatic.
I believe some of them stepped out of the room even...
Yeah, but there were no heckles. I think the point is it's detoxifying the Labour brand under Corbyn.
And I think it seems to go in the right direction. I mean, you bear in mind, of course, that the Tories need a 5% swing and Labour needs a 12% swing. So, I mean, it's still quite a hill to climb.
It's all rhetoric, isn't it, to be fair? But it's
what you're doing. It's position.
It's good rhetoric, absolutely. The Great British Power thing, I do feel there's a certain amount of legitimacy to the complaint that when Thatcher privatised British Gas and so on, there was this great rush for sort of state-holding democracy, lovely idea, shareholding democracy, rather, and within 6 months it was all owned by France, wasn't it? It was all bought up, and it's happened with the rail, and it's happened with electricity, and it has been a bit of a fiasco, that.
Well, it's always been one of those peculiar things, isn't it? The people who are interested in the free movement of capital are not interested in the free movement of people.
No, well, that was you could say that was Brexit in a nutshell. On to Wednesday's Daily Mail. A Labour MP has made quite a huck-up.
Oh, very good.
Well, I didn't write it. I'm not sure that's like. I'm sure it's a hiccup rather than than anything more vulgar that's being echoed there. But anyway, what's
okay?
The story, Simon?
Rupa Huq, who is the Labour MP for Ealing and Acton, said at a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference that the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, who is the first black Chancellor in the UK, was only superficially black. And she went on to say, if you heard him on Radio 4, you wouldn't know that he was black. One of the things that really annoys me about this, and I hesitate to want to agree to some of the people who say these kind of things, what annoys me about that, though, is that if I think about it in my own context, or I think about it in the suffragette context, the whole point about the suffragettes, which was a kind of leftish, liberal-leaning movement to get women the vote, meant that when women got the vote, they didn't all vote liberal left-leaning. They voted what they wanted to vote. When we fought for gay equality, we didn't fight to be the same. We all fought to be different. That was the point. The point was to be what you want. So it seems to me the point of making advances on racial discrimination is precisely so black people and brown people and other people of mixed races can do and be and think and vote and stand for what they want. So the idea that you somehow have to be left-wing to be black
she's
in a minority...
She's calling him a race traitor, isn't she? Which is filthy language,
and
really.
It's just awful. I cannot bear it. And it's this idea that minorities have a single voice. People say to me, they say, are you LGBT? And I said, we can't be all of them.
And also, actually, Rupa Huq herself, for what it's worth, was privately educated and went to Cambridge. So the idea that she represents some kind of grassroots representation of...
But it's just this idea of, isn't it, where people say to me, sometimes you find somebody, you say, well, what do gay people think? You say, well, I didn't go to the meeting on Thursday.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like you, with Jews, you know, do you all get on Friday and phone each other?
Well, actually, we do.
Actually, you do. Oh, sorry, I forgot about conspiracy, of course.
There is an interesting... I suppose, a conceit which she has struck, however cack-handedly. Is there any sense in which one should be more than superficially black? The point of being black is that it's the colour of your skin. Are we saying that there is anything more than the colour of your skin which determines that you're black?
No, what I would say, too, is that when you think of these categories, whether it's LGBT or BAME or women or whatever, when you think of these categories, you have to describe... you have to tell people what you're actually describing and therefore what aspects of people's lives you're describing. So it seems to me it's perfectly reasonable that we all, you know, people who are not white experience discrimination on the basis of their colour. It may not be all day, but it's probably every day. But that is the only bit of their experience you're really explaining. Now, then you have to go into subcultural experiences and religious experiences and family background experiences, and everybody has different ones.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, she's a victim of racism herself. She got sent stuff in the post, these like obnoxious, toxic packages that were sent to a bunch of MPs. But you know, in her apology to him, she said it was ill-judged comments. No, it's a racist comment that she did, and this goes to the larger thing that people on the left or the people who think they're in part of the community of the good have this blind spot that they can't possibly be racist. And even a person of colour can't... and that's just not true. And even in this case, you know, I don't want to say go back, it starts with the Jews, but the fact is she has had a few accusations of anti-Semitism levied against her from previous employees of her, who said, one of them said that he turned up and had a badge, a Star of David on his bag, and she was like, going, well, why have you got the Israeli flag? He's like, no, it's a Star of David, I'm Jewish, and wouldn't drop it. Someone else, she took down a poster saying that there's no tolerance for anti-Semitism. She took it down when this person went off sick. Said, "Oh, we don't need this anymore."
She came to the defence.
Yeah,
is it
Naz Shah? Liked a bunch of anti-Semitic tweets. So that has been the problem with Labour certainly before they're trying to. This goes back to this detoxifying thing where people on the left sort of genuinely believe because they're left that it's impossible for them to be anything but, you know, I don't have a racist bone in my body, as Corbyn says, and they have this blind spot. And that's been the problem all along, is that this unwillingness to accept that actually people of colour can be... anyone can be racist.
She has apologised, and also she has been suspended, I think.
She has been suspended. She's lost the whip automatically, which is
Which I suppose is exactly what should happen. But as you say, it wasn't ill-judged. It was clearly thought through. It clearly represented what she genuinely thinks.
She was a sociology lecturer. She is a very clever person. And
there are other black spokeswomen, Shola, I remember her full name, the sort of activist and provocateurs who appears on television quite often, is saying that Kwasi Kwarteng represents, he's a racial gatekeeper. This is that these people are appointed deliberately by the Tory party in order to present, you know, the acceptable face of black politics. I mean, it is absurdly toxic, isn't it, this kind of thinking?
It's massively racist in its own right,
And David Lammy refused to talk about it. There's a first as well. So now in the Times, mortgage deals are disappearing quicker than Rupa Huq's political aspirations. Simon, tell us about this.
Well, the Times story's got a growth plan will work. Kwasi Kwarteng tells the City, and he got together a bunch of people from Legal & General, Royal London, BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan and Aviva in an attempt to calm the markets. And it struck me that the markets are a bit like... I once saw this happen. My brother's dog did this. My brother's dog bit through an electric cable.
Right.
And the markets are behaving like that. The dog ran up and down the carton several times, hair stood on end, ran round and round and round in circles, yelping, and Kwasi Kwarteng is doing the equivalent in that context of standing at the side with a vegan bonio going, come here, boy, come here, boy.
Your analogy suggests that the markets were stupid to bite the cable in the first place.
No, I think what I'm suggesting is that Kwasi Kwarteng effectively gave them the cable and created this effect in them. And, of course, they've gone completely berserk because it's a mad thing to do, what they've done.
I'm not sure I buy that analogy. I mean, I know you mean it sort of jokingly anyway, but I don't think it's remotely like that. I think what has happened is that the markets have overreacted massively to a set possibly of counterintuitive policies, and then they've rebounded again. In your dog scenario, the dog is fine again now.
Yes, I mean, don't take the analogy too seriously, Simon. It being a vaguely
I
convenient
know,
show.
absolutely.
So,
but what I'm saying
just
is,
to remind you.
No,
on that.
you don't need to remind me. The point is the analogy doesn't work. If you want to make a humorous analogy about a rabid dog,
what's so fantastic about this programme?
The markets are not acting like that. They have not bitten through and been surprised by something. They have overreacted to what actually turns out not to be. Quite the fundamentals of Britain's economy.
What I forgot to say was I forgot to say it was a lower voltage cable.
Okay,
and they overreacted to the biting through a lower voltage cable. I think the point that I'm really wanting to make is that the markets have gone seriously. They have reacted very, very strongly. They're not. I mean, they're supposedly natural allies of that sort of economics, aren't they? Aren't they of supply side economics, of less regulation, of less tax, and so on and so forth? Yes, less tax and less regulation, and yet what they're doing is they're saying, actually, this is not a sensible strategy because we want stability and we want real growth, and we have no sense in which this is going to provide real growth.
It's not just the dollar. It's like the 30-year bond yields have gone up. Like some said, that's a real problem in terms of borrowing. For borrowing, and it's going to be much more expensive to borrow now.
Also, politically, surely, what's the point of pursuing a policy which drives interest rates up, which immediately puts people's homeowners' mortgages up, and so on and so forth? I mean, that's not a vote-winning strategy, because they're not going to come down in the next 2 years.
No, they might very easily not be vote-winning strategy. I don't think. I mean, some people have said it's like populist economy. I don't think it's populist at all. I think it's going to be quite a hard shock. But interest rates have been historically low for a very long time, and they have said that they want to see them go up. It's not in their gift. That is the Bank of England's choice. But I think they may very well be intending to force their hand on that.
Yeah, but I mean, he's sort of saying that it's all about the supply side reform. He's done the one part of it, and now the other side he wants to vote. He hasn't actually said yet, and that's till November when he's going to do this stuff about the supply side reform, and that's going to supposedly fix everything. He also said that there were two exogenous shocks, which which Ms.
These maybe are more like the dog and the cake.
Well,
maybe
I think Ms. Huq was very offended him using such a big, complicated word. How dare he? He's a very smart guy. But he says here we need to get the city in the UK back to where it's always been, the world's foremost financial centre. Well, of course, that's a difficult thing to do when a lot of companies moved out, because I believe there was something happened a few years ago because of
No, London has survived Brexit.
Has it survived? Has it thrived through Brexit? That's the other thing.
The city is still very strong, and other companies have come back in. Some of them that relocated.
Yeah, but come on, when you cut yourself off, particularly in manufacturing and other things, from your major market, because you actually.
Come on, let's not do Brexit.
All right, I won't do Brexit.
Next in the mirror, explosive bubbles are rising to the water's surface. Now, it's not Josh in the bath. It's something much more serious. Now, this actually may have some bearing on something we were just talking about, but do the story first.
Right, yes. So, explosion and gas leak at the Nord Stream pipeline branded Russia terrorist attack. This is from Poland's Prime Minister. He also, Ukraine believes that the explosion at the site was a terrorist attack. At least it's sabotage, because it's 3 separate attacks. And they've found that this is all like underwater. The Danish Energy Agency have confirmed that there are at least 2 leaks, but there's supposedly another one. There are concerns in terms of it's not toxic, the methane, but it does have environmental concerns as well. and the pipes were they were shut down by Russia anyway, saying, they said they were trying to fix stuff, but really it's Holly has to ransom. But actually, those pipes were full of gas. So there's an issue here. And actually, they're saying even if Ukraine sorts itself out somehow in the next few months, these faults are not going to be fixed overnight.
The obvious implication is that that this was sabotage, and then the question is cui bono. Let's go back to your dog. Who benefits from this? What's the? I mean, where does the finger of suspicion? Simon, do you have a view?
Well, I mean, Russia's the obvious finger of suspicion.
Why would they do it? They could just turn it off.
Well, they could turn it off, and they have already turned it off.
Yeah. So why would they sabotage their own gas?
Well, I suppose because what they wanted to, because the thing is that when they've turned it off, it's actually full of gas.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's a storage tank at the moment, and if you damage it, you actually. You can't turn it on again.
Yeah, so why would they do that? It's
because all that gas is now...
Well, because in the end, what they want to do is continue to put pressure on energy supplies at the other end of this thing, i.e. Germany mainly,
but they
and the rest
do that
of
by
us.
refusing to turn it back on again.
Yeah, well, they could do that by
They are the single
now if they were forced to turn it back on again, because actually there's a negotiated settlement in Ukraine and public world opinion starts to turn against them, and they realise that in the Russian economy they've got to turn it on again because they need the money, actually, they still can't turn it on again again. And Putin is clearly not in a position to make rational choices at the moment, because if you watch his behaviour at the moment, he doesn't do things for rational reasons.
I'm going to be honest with you, that sounds like a huge reach. It doesn't make any sense at all. I think they're the least likely people to have sabotaged that pipeline.
But your understanding is that they turned it off the original supply, but that doesn't mean that that gas was not be able to be used.
There are two scenarios which I think would make much more sense. America said they would end Nord Stream 2 if Russia invaded Ukraine, that they would put an end to it. They've actually literally said that. Biden's on tape saying it. And
do you think the Americans did it?
Certainly wouldn't put it past them, and it's in their interest, because if resolve weakens in Europe to continue the fight as fuel prices go up and people start to genuinely feel the cold this winter, they may say, "Listen, we want the Russian gas. Let's negotiate and we accept that we have a weak position because we're freezing to death here." They can no longer do that now, and Ukraine certainly would benefit from that as well. If Ukraine are committed to seeing this through to the death, then it also stops. It's basically the old thing about burning your bridges, isn't it, or burning your ships? You know, it prevents any sort of weakness in resolve, any collapse of the determination to see the fight through to the bitter end.
Speaking of burning ships, they've had to push all the ships all around because, of course, if this stuff catches fire, these ships are going to go up.
These are metaphorical ships.
Yes, but you took a real, the real ships also.
These are real ships.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for part one. Coming up, we have Primark Peoples, a groupthink epidemic, and a misgendered paedophile. What a time to be alive. We will see you after the break.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, joined tonight by two of my favourite comedians, Rhyming Simon Fanshawe and Josh Time He Had a Wash Howie. So, next up in the Daily Mail, stop the press, it's a man in a dress. Or is it? The police may have something to say about this, Josh.
Yes, Sussex Police. Women's Right campaigner demands probe after Sussex Police warn it is hateful to say trans paedophile was a man after they sexually abused 7 children. So this is amazing. I saw this play out.
And we're going with they, are we? In order to avoid having an opinion on this.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So I've been following this the last few days online. It's unbelievable. So this person, this biological man, and by the way, it should be pointed out, hasn't had a gender recognition certificate or anything. He's still a man, even though he identifies as a woman now. Basically abused lots of children historically, has just been sent to jail for 18 years, by the way, to a woman's jail, but that's a separate thing that we could talk about. And that was put out by the Sussex police to say that we've done it. And women protesters stood up, and some men said, this is ridiculous. Why are you saying that there's a woman who committed this crime? By the way, when they committed the crime, they did it as a man.
Right.
And then,
all of them, they've only committed crimes as a man.
As a man, yeah. And by the way, 98% of sexual assaults, whether you identify as a woman or not, is by biological men. But then what happened, this is the unbelievable thing, that Sussex police on Twitter then started defending this paedophile. So you've got this situation. So first of all, by them saying it's this person's a woman, first of all, that's re-traumatising for the victims. It's insulting to women and to anybody who just understands science. And, of course, it messes with these crime statistics that suddenly women are massively overrepresented from before in terms of sexual abuse and whatnot, or they're actually going to go with the feelings of a paedophile. I mean, it's madness. And then so someone stepped in, a gender-critical feminist stepped in and said, excuse me, this is wrong that you're pushing this. And they said, hey, we don't accept any hateful crimes, and sort of seemed to insinuate that she was breaking the law. Yeah. And then everyone was like, OK, then come on, where have we broken the law here? And then they obviously haven't, and especially now because of Maya Forster, she had shown that it's legal to have these gender-critical views, and they've had to back down, and they've deleted the tweet since. But it's ridiculous. I mean, the people running these accounts are, not even children, they're idiots.
Yeah. I mean, it strikes me there are three things. There's in court, in prison and in the press. And, the point... I mean, to be fair, in court, the crimes are clearly attributed to a man, which makes the subsequent behaviour kind of bonkers, because the acknowledgement in the court said it has actually been recorded as a male crime, which is absolutely fundamentally important, because otherwise you start, as you say, to distort the crime figures. Then there's the question about in prison. I mean, is it actually acceptable? Because... for all the vulnerable groups there are, female prisoners are hyper-vulnerable and are frequently themselves victims of sexual assault and so on and so forth, and drug misuse and etc. Is it right to put somebody who doesn't even have a gender recognition certificate into that context? I think that's the second question.
An intact male.
An intact male. And the third thing is how you report this in the press. So when you see the headline, a woman abuses, blah, 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 that seems to me to distort the perception. So I would say that it's worth thinking of it in those three terms and making sure that actually in each case you're being accurate and conveying the right impression.
Woman convicted of historic offences against children in Sussex. There's the photograph. I mean, you just feel like, I mean, that word gaslighting, it comes up again and again, doesn't it? It's just absurd. And it's genuinely Orwellian. It's absolutely core.
It's this peculiar notion, I think, too, that is so strong at the moment that somehow feelings trump material reality. Yeah. And, of course, feelings are important, and you have to... It's worth listening to feelings. I accept that.
But the feeling of a paedophile?
Hang on a second. It's worth listening. I didn't say what you do about them is different. Fair enough. Let's listen. Fine. But actually, you then say, no, but now we're going to do this. And we make a solution. You should do that at work. If somebody says that was racist, that was sexist, OK, listen. But at that point, you then have to have a dialogue and create a solution which actually works.
Though, it's not just feelings. The fact is it's a very narrow range of... it's a particular phenomenon that we're talking about.
It is, but I think it comes from a notion that the subjective, my experience, my fear, my feelings, my this, my that, my the next thing, that itself now becomes the way in which people interpret the world without recognising that actually our interpretation of ourselves, our sense of ourselves, is actually discovered in relation to other people.
And you're having police defending that is my feeling.
But that's clearly, as you say, some child in the social media department. But they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Absolutely. The training, the backup should not allow them to make those kind of ludicrous statements.
The Express now, perhaps the police should be focusing more on this issue as domestic abuse victims are being let down by the system. Simon?
Well, what they're saying is that the headline is a staggering 94% of emotional abuse offenders escape conviction. What is also extraordinary about this is that the controlling coercive behaviour, CCB as it's known, and not only is that rocketed, but what it's saying here is that the majority of victims of domestic abuse are not victims of violence, they are victims of these non-violent coercive behaviour. You may remember Sally Challen. Sally Challen was a woman who was convicted of murder. She beat her husband on the head with a hammer. Yeah. She was convicted of murder, but her sons then stood up for her and campaigned for, along with two remarkable people, Julie Bindel and Harriet Wistrich, who are Justice for Women. And they campaigned for the notion of coercive controlling behaviour to be taken into account, and actually eventually got into the 2015, what's it called, the law that was passed, sorry, I can't remember that, the Serious Crime Act of 2015. So coercive controlling behaviour is now part of a defence. And what happened to Sally Challen was that she was then reconvicted of manslaughter and released on time served. I mean, I think what's so frightening about this is this sense that we stereotype domestic violence very much as physical, whereas actually what's happening here is this vast spread, and of course underreported because of coercively controlling.
Just to be clear, so this is you're describing a phenomenon whereby somebody is driven insane to the point of violence themselves by the coercive behaviour to which they eventually react.
What happens is you trap people by a consistent deprivation of any kind of control. Yeah. So you take their diaries, you control their diary, you control the money, you control their friends.
I understand that. But is it a defence? Is it a defence in the case that you have reacted violently, or is it a crime in itself?
It's an aspect of a defence, as I understand it. And I think my understanding is it takes it from murder to manslaughter because it becomes a mitigating defence.
Because when it says the offenders escape conviction, that suggests that these are people who have been tried for, like what the controlling behaviour that you're describing, and have got off, rather than people who have raised that behaviour as a defence to explain why they went mad and grabbed a hammer.
No, you've got two things here. One is that the vast percentage of these cases never reach court, or they don't even have a charge attached to them. So that's part of the problem, is that a tiny minority of them.
This staggering 94% of emotional abuse offenders escape conviction. That suggests that there is a potential... The other 6% are convicted. What are they convicted of? Of emotional abuse. It is a crime in itself rather than a defence.
Yes, it's a crime under the Serious Crime Act 2015. Yeah. Yes.
Well, it says here...
The offence of controlling or coercive behaviour was introduced through Section 76 of the Serious Crime Act 2015. Yeah. So they are convicted. But the point is that very few of them who are investigators or whatever ever get to either a charge or to court.
Yeah.
So whilst loads of them get off, actually tons of them don't even get that far.
Can I just make a point about that? First of all, they're only saying 443 people were actually convicted of the CCB last year, which is 0.01%. But the reason Women's Aid put out a statement saying that they're urging police forces to take up more training to understand this coercive control. But then there's a statistic here, which is that almost 2/3 of those cases resulted in no further action because the victim did not support the prosecution for the offence. So I would argue that it seems like the majority of these cases not going to court, not being tried, is because people have taken back or not helping the police. And that seems to be the area with which... And I know there are legitimate reasons for...
Well, that's why, if it's coercive control, that's why you don't do it.
In tomorrow's Mirror, trouble in Primark, it seems, well, you get what you pay for. Josh...
I love Primark.
I would imagine you are...
like sliding in a bit of snobbery there.
I don't know what you're saying, mate.
All
my kids are all outfitted in Primark.
I mean, I buy invariably at TK Maxx. They have lockable changing room doors. If they're capable of doing it, I would have thought Primark... What is the setup in Primark?
Primark changed it from 2019. They brought in this policy of unisex
but it's not a unisex free-for-all, is it?
Yeah, well, it's like curtains. It's still curtains. It's not, Well, it's not. Well, none of it's any good. There's a reason why we have these protected spaces, which is because women need protection.
Well, anyone would. I wouldn't want to get chased around a curtain with some other blokes in the changing room.
This young woman put out a video, quite disturbing video, of her crying in a car in the car park because she'd been in these changing rooms, and these two guys from the same group had kind of accidentally walked in even though all the other ones were empty. And Primark were apologising, and she said, they've been a big help to me and stuff. The crazy thing is she's also, while she's crying and stuff, is saying that she actually is a big supporter of the unisex changing rooms and she loves them because it makes everyone feel included. Well, I'm sorry, you don't get both.
No.
That's the whole point. So
it's false consciousness. She's being bullied by the voices in her head into trotting out the narrative line that she knows she's supposed to support, but she's quite clearly been a victim of the exact circumstances.
And these were men, and not only with the men, they did it twice.
The same group.
I mean, this is not accidental.
And even if it wasn't just men as well, we all know 15, 16-year-old boys, cannot be trusted in a situation like that. Not
20-year-old men.
There's a fit bird in cubicle number 3. Go and have a look. All you've got to do is lift the curtain.
But I wouldn't say it's 16-year-old boys. I'd say it's grown men. That's where sexual predators do. They will find these loopholes and they will utilise them. And she says here at the end, she says, oh, I just want people to please be careful if you go to the changing room, try not to go on your own. I'd never do that again. I'd rather take it home. Well, then why are you saying that you actually support unisex changing rooms?
Because
That's why they're there for a reason.
She believes that she needs to have that opinion.
But isn't it awful that women, this is yet again women feeling they've got to change their behaviour to accommodate men. They've got to wear longer skirts, they're not going to go out at night, they've got to take a torch, they've got to take
She can't use changing rooms.
What Primark have got to do is put decent lockable cubicle doors on.
Well, that's absurd. But do you know what Primark did? Primark went, oh, sorry. Well, I'm sorry, in this particular case, it's not enough.
And now they're saying they are looking into the policy, but we'll see.
Now, in the Telegraph, there's one thing authors are supposed to be. It's good at sticking to the narrative, but they are coming unstuck as well, it seems, Simon.
Yes, this is the Telegraph having a go at the Society of Authors, which is, since about 140 years ago, has been the sort of the trade union, if you like, of freelance writers. That's what it is. And it's currently chaired by somebody who wrote the novel Chocolat, which you may remember was also turned into a film, and she's called Joanne Harris. There is a woman also called Kate Clancy, and Kate Clancy is a poet and also is a teacher, and she wrote a book called Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me, which is an extraordinary book. I mean, I wrote a piece about this because I felt very strongly when Kate Clancy got attacked for using so-called stereotyping impressions of these children and the way she described them. And I read what the kids had written about what she did for them. And the kids wrote, Kate gave us the tool to articulate ourselves as powerful individuals, our writing. And one girl who she described as almond-shaped eyes wrote a piece that said, I have almond-shaped eyes, and in the Hazara community from which I come in Afghanistan, that is a compliment.
I was going to say, it's hardly vile abuse in this country.
It's hardly vile abuse. So what happened was that Kate Clancy wrote this novel, was attacked by a couple of non-writers, but people who are sort of sociologists and academics and so on and so forth. She just felt that she was not in any way supported by the Society of Authors. Joanne Harris has had a consistent record in this, the particular peak of the record being that when Salman Rushdie was shot, the Society of Authors came out in full support of Salman Rushdie. They have never, ever said anything about J.K. Rowling.
Well, she put out a tweet, I remember this, which was going, anybody else, just as a little sort of straw poll survey, have any other authors had death threats? As it's really belittling.
It was really sarky and nasty.
And one tweeter described J.K. Rowling as complicit with hate and a Trojan horse for bigotry, to which Joanne Harris replied, I agree completely. So the argument is that instead of supporting all authors and standing for freedom of speech, which is what the Society of Authors is supposed to do, that under the guidance of Joanne Harris, they are taking a very partial line. However, it's really clear that there's a difference between the chief exec and Joanne Harris, the chair. Quite clear that Kate Solomons, who runs the organisation, takes a slightly different view if you read through the the comments.
I have to say, I'm with you on the... Kate Clancy had I don't know if she still has it, a Twitter account where she posts some of these poems that have come out of her classroom. Some of them are really terrific work, you know. It's obviously good work that she's doing.
And also she describes very real situations. There was a classic one where she described a girl who she'd known when she was 16 and then she saw her later in her early 20s and she'd put on a huge amount of weight and was eating all the wrong things and da-da-da-da. She merely described that. What she was talking about was how poverty isn't good for your health.
Well, that's it for part two. After the break, we have sexting, cold water plunges, fighting chimpanzees. Or, as I call it, Sunday morning. We'll see you in a few minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I'm joined by the wonderfully fragrant comedians Simon Fanshawe and Josh Howie. They've maintained their fragrance all the way through to the end. Next in the Telegraph, it's political correctness gone mod. That's what RAF have been up to, Josh.
Yes, so the MOD has admitted that mistakes were made in its RAF diversity recruitment drive. This is after their head of recruitment actually resigned last month because she refused to order in order to hire more diverse candidates, because they were literally saying, we're just going to put women and ethnic minority candidates in front of everybody else, i.e. they were so desperate to bring in those to prioritise them. But of course that isn't fair to other groups, and the head of the Air Chief Marshal, Mike Winston, said there's been no discrimination against any group. He reiterated it twice, but, you know, except for the group who was the most skilled and qualified for the jobs.
Yeah, but hang on. Look, there's a way of getting around this, and there's no trade-off. I spend my days doing this. There's no trade-off between diversity and quality if you're absolutely clear that there's a quality threshold. The law entitles you, if there's a significant imbalance in the opportunities that you're offering in your recruitment, to rebalance that imbalance. So if what you're saying is that actually we're not offering opportunities in the right way to skilled people who could be great members of the RAF, who come from ethnic minorities or half female, if we're not offering those opportunities in such a way that they're succeeding through the recruitment process, you're either saying they're not good enough, or you're saying, actually, we're not providing the opportunities well. So what you can do is you say, there's a threshold. You need to be at this level. Now, once we've got that, OK, candidates, let's think about why women don't apply. Let's think about why ethnic minorities don't apply. And let's make sure that we do something which opens up opportunities. And then it makes it fair. And this fairness argument is always used. What people say is it's not fair to the others. And you find there's 90% men and 10% everybody else. And suddenly, because you're trying to make it 20% everybody else and only 80% men, everybody suddenly says it's not fair to the men. Yes, it is fair to the men, because what you're doing is you're creating a better world in which there are more opportunities for everybody.
If the people are qualified at the right level.
Well, you don't want unqualified people in the RAF.
Well, of course not, but it seems like if by prioritising...
Unless, when people join the RAF, it's like train drivers. Do they know how to fly planes when they join the RAF?
Well, of course it's
Answer, no. Are they trained by the RAF to fly planes? Answer, yes. As long as they've got the potential and they cross the threshold, you can train people to fly the planes. And if they can't be trained to fly the planes, then what you do after the probation period is stand them down. But it's not unfair to open up opportunities for a wider group of people.
But that's not what it's saying here.
That's where they made the mistake.
Well, that is where they made a mistake, and they've admitted it now.
But I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm disagreeing with them.
OK, fine. Well, anyway, I've seen Police Academy. I know how it works.
OK. In tomorrow's Independent, sexting, why can't men do it quite right? Here's resident unrequited sexter Josh to teach you how it's done.
Yes, so this is because Adam Levine, who's in Maroon 5, he's the Maroon 5 frontman, some of his tweets, but some of his texts came out online, an ex-girlfriend or someone, where he'd said I may need to see the booty. I don't know if anyone's... That body is absurd. That's the kind of thing he was getting up to.
Is he free and single? Is there an element of this that is embarrassing because he's in a relationship?
I have, to be honest, I don't know. I've known a few of the songs. Anyway, so I started reading this. And then it gets to the point on page 2 where he says, if you were raised as a cis-het man, like cis-heterosexual man, and then I just stop reading because whatever this person thinks is not worthy of being read anymore.
The thing that I don't...
Using cis is a red flag for me.
The thing that I don't understand about this sexting bit is why would you veer towards the explicit if you're trying to be romantic or sexy? Because what's romantic and sexy and flirtatious is ambiguous, it's not explicit. I remember once, years ago, I interviewed the playwright John Mortimer, and I said to John Mortimer, how do you write a typical seduction scene in English with English people, and British people? And he said, you write it like this. He said, the man, or the woman, says to the other person, tea. And the other person says, yes. Milk? Oh, yes, please. Sugar? Oh, 4.
Wow.
Tells you
That's
story.
not going to get you anywhere nowadays.
It tells you.
I
know.
I think nowadays you're going to need to get with that. I think I prefer the booty stuff.
Well, I don't. My point is that what that does is it tells a story which is entirely under. It's all subtext.
Hard to offer someone tea on the phone. Though,
Good luck, guys, trying that tea, the 4 sugar thing. But I think the real thing is that he doesn't need to be good at sexting. He's some famous band guy. He can just I fancy you. Oh, brilliant! That's done.
But it's the explicit. It's so dull to be explicit.
It's better than the Ian Botham one.
I'm just glad that I got together with my wife before all smartphones came out and all those.
We had smartphones. I remember we used to text each other suggestive words.
Well, you did.
Foist was one of Kate's favourites.
Oh my gosh, this foist. I got foist on one side, I got the 4 sugars on the other. This is getting all a bit hot and bothered in here.
I can't understand why asking for 4 sugars, you just think, my God, she's a diabetic. What? Why is that seductive? The 4 sugars. Did I mishear you? 4 sugars. Oh, 4.
If you can't...
Sweet.
If you can't see it, then you're on...
I can't see it!
You're on the explicit
And I'm not willing to accept John Mortimer as an authority on seduction technique. Just
hello. I think you need to look up a little bit of biographical information about John Mortimer then to find that he was found by women to be enormously seductive in the best possible way.
Just in his milk sugar tea routine.
Wow.
It's merely an example of being inexplicit.
Oh, 4.
OK.
I'm stumped. In The Guardian, Ofcom holding tech firms accountable. This is an ongoing issue, Simon?
Well, Ofcom has a new chair, or at least from April, Ofcom, or 1st of May, Ofcom has a new chair, Ofcom being the broadcast regulator, of course, to which we are a subject at the moment. And this is Michael Grade, who used to run, Channel 4 and ITV and the BBC. He's done all that, so he's very well qualified. You'll remember there was all the rumpus about trying to get Paul Dacre, the former editor of the Daily Mail, in as the Ofcom chair, and that failed. Anyway, they've got a broadcast person in there. But when he went for his pre-selection hearing, his pre-confirmation hearing, one of the accusations and one of the things they said in the report was this: he's fantastically qualified, but he doesn't know anything about social media. And he had rather foolishly, I think, said, well, I don't know anything about social media, but my children do. He's 79, by the way, but that doesn't matter because there's lots of people who are old who know loads about social media, but that's what he said. So I think this is 2 things. I think this is him trying to remind people, and Ofcom said, hang on, we better get on this, so the press department said, you better make a statement about this. So I think he's trying to rebalance that.
It's like, MySpace is really cool.
But, yes, OK, but the other thing is that he's absolutely right. What he's using as an example is the Molly Russell case, and you may remember Molly Russell was a young girl who killed herself, I think she was 15, and she had been watching these extraordinary images which glamorised self-harm and suicide and so forth. And eventually the Meta spokesperson here has finally said, actually, it was inappropriate and we shouldn't have done it. And he's using that as an example to say, actually, these tech companies do seriously have to take seriously some of this stuff. They can't just say, oh, it's nothing to do with us, we're just the platform. They've actually got to acknowledge that some of this stuff is potentially actually fatal.
Also, part of this speech is also about the type of dialogue that he's talking about being created by the more mainstream media. And he's saying that he expects, civilised debate about... It's not his job or Ofcom's job to come in and say, this position's right, this position's wrong. But he's saying that, there's about civilised debate about politics, society, culture, because it has negatively escalated to a certain point in terms of the culture wars, which is... Obviously, he's a big fan of headliners. He sees how we do it right here.
And fair enough, because Ofcom does try very hard. They have a series they have a broadcasting act, and they have to judge things on the basis of the evidence, and that they can't say, oh, this was right and that was wrong, as you say. So, and in one sense, this is good news.
Tomorrow's Express, Samantha, about online dating. He faces deportation.
Yeah, this is...
Comes to you, Josh, again.
This is...
like you're in the crosshairs tonight.
Yeah, no, well, this is a child inverted commas, child migrant outs himself as 25 years old. But actually, it sounds like he could even be older. He was on a dating website. He's now facing deportation. He was in the category, I think, well, he was on one 19 to 25 category and one 30 to 55. Also, when he came over, he said he was 16. He was actually put into foster care, I believe. There he is he? Yeah, and some of the social workers saying, well, wait a minute, he's got grey hair. He doesn't look like a 16-year-old.
I like the way he's wearing a T-shirt, or is he holding?
No, he's holding up a
of
sign. I think
Okay,
it's a Kurdish. I think he's Kurdish and he's protesting. So what, if he is from Iran at the moment, which is obviously he may have a genuine case for seeking asylum, but obviously pretending that you're 16 years old is not it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Because it does tend to dissolve sympathy and patience with this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems is it being the Express, of course, they're using a single example in order to now say all immigrants are obviously saying they're children when they're not. My own approach to this is I'm 65, but my view is that every birthday I'm going to add 18 months, because if I look good for 65, I look great for 66 and a half.
I'm going to ask them if they...
in The Guardian, in Europe, hairy beasts are growing in numbers.
This is very exciting. This is all about the recovery, thanks mainly to human efforts. It's all about the recovery of species that were going extinct. And particularly wolves and brown bears are making... And the grey wolf has been the fastest recovered species amongst all the carnivores.
Excellent.
And brown bears, I love this. It says, and since 1960, the population of brown bears have increased by 44%, driven by better legal protection, although persecution is still a big risk and human-bear conflicts continue. Now, I don't know where we're still doing bear baiting, but we should obviously look at that. But unfortunately, no insects or plants were included in the report. And this is apparently because insects and plants are generally thought to be not very charismatic and therefore not much worthy of bringing back.
They often benefit, though, don't they, when you introduce the apex predators, the whole ecosystem.
Oh, the ecosystem certainly does. Well, apparently the wolves have an enormous effect on that. But it is a great story. It's an absolute kind of success story. And the only one that made me, I suppose, chuckle a little bit was I didn't realise that in the UK, beavers was officially reintroduced in Kent in 2002.
I did not.
400 years after the last one was killed.
I knew they were up in Scotland, which they're quite proud of.
I didn't realise we had no beavers until they introduced them in Kent.
There you go. Got a view on that?
Well, just
a view on the high street on a Saturday night?
Well, first of all, they haven't reintroduced wolves to the UK. They're talking about it. I personally don't want them to. And number two is there's this positive, of course, like that through human intervention this is having an impact. But it should be said that wildlife is still being lost at a record speed. There's 1 million species at risk of extinction.
Yes. Lest the smile linger on our faces for more than 3 or 4 seconds. More monkey business in tomorrow's Times. Could you take a chimpanzee, Josh? What do you think?
No, absolutely. Certainly not after reading this article. So, think you can beat a chimpanzee in a fight. Others do. So, this is asking this thing that's sort of gone viral. And essentially, the gist of it is that Americans are a lot more confident. And even American women are more confident than British men in terms of who they think they can meet, in terms of these different animals that they were asked to. Big dogs, chimpanzees, king cobras. 72% of Americans think that they could beat a rat, but only 67% of Britons. I'm surprised that so much of the UK
maybe
population...
it's a question of being quick enough rather than actually being defeated.
If you could smash its head in or whatever.
The theory is that the Atlantic crossing selected for optimism and confidence. Okay. What do you think? Does that sound plausible, or is it? I mean,
I think there is. America seems to be overall quite an optimistic society. Yeah. You could argue that, or they also have this incredible sense of self-belief that propels them forward.
Yeah, but I also think if you think that 6% of Americans and 2% of Brits reckon they could beat a grizzly bear, you don't really need Darwin to explain the answer, the theory of evolution, do you? I mean, these are the people we can do without. The thing that you did, actually, 2009, I don't know if you remember this, but 2009, David Cameron was coming to Brighton, and the Evening Argus in Brighton asked people in Brighton, what is the question you want to ask David Cameron?
Right.
And the question was posted, who would win in a fight between a baboon and a badger?
Right.
And this has been, I don't know if you ever read Pop Bitch, a terrific gossip site, if you read it. And they've been running this now since 2009. And that, I'm sure, is the origin of it. Who would win, the baboon or the badger? What do you think?
I have no... I
I'd
would
say
have thought
baboon.
the baboon. I mean, it feels like the baboon's the obvious choice.
Well, it's a great... I know,
Remember,
it's a
the shark versus the tiger is the tricky one, because you know the implied...
Where would they fight?
Exactly, yeah, on the strand. The Times, once again, wild swimming. Is it good for you? Not if it's full of sharks. But then again, don't ask me, I'm banned from all 3 Hampstead Heath ponds.
Well, this is one of the great conundrums, isn't it? This is about whether cold water is beneficial to your health. And it's hard to tell, says the Times, whether people are healthy because they swim in cold water or they swim in cold water because they're healthy.
Yep.
I can only contribute this, is that we live opposite the nudist beach in Brighton. We look out at it. And I have to tell you, the people who go swimming 365 days of the year in the nude are definitely people who are mad and healthy, and that's why they do it. I'm not convinced at all. All my friends say, oh, yes, my heart's...
Do you sit out there with your clipboard in the morning?
Do you know...
Ticky, oh, yes, he's back.
The worst was when they tried to close the nudist beach and some woman with a clipboard, suddenly I was lying on the nudist beach, basking, eyes closed, and there was an eclipse. And I looked up and there was a vast pair of pendulous bosoms coming towards me, and she went, sign this! And that was to keep the nudist beach open, and I formed my view of these people ever since that rather shocking experience.
Have you had a splash, Josh?
I have had a... yeah, I'm going to be down there on Saturday with Simon, checking it out. It's just nice to see that wild swimming getting a bit more publicity, because it's not mentioned enough in The Guardian every day.
Yeah, but still, it's not bad, because it's free, isn't it? And it's, you know, as health fads go, it's something that
But this article sort of says, well, it's from a study in Norway which looked at a bunch of other studies and said, oh, it's all inconclusive. And then it lists a bunch of reasons why actually it might be beneficial, which is elevated levels of white blood cells, active immune system. So there are a bunch of things that actually does seem to help.
If you bother to get up and go out and take a bit of exercise. But what I like is that it's published in the International Journal of Circumpolar Health.
That's very good. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Simon Fanshawe. Headliners will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Andrew Doyle, Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon. In the meantime, I've been Simon Evans. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin,